I'd like to call this special meeting for Great Island Advisory Committee. This is so exciting to order at 6 o'clock on July 19th. And the first item on the agenda is to welcome and have introductions. I think everybody has kind of met everybody so far, right? Okay, so I'm going to go right to, well, first I want to welcome you. I can't tell you how excited I am to see every single person here. I know that you all are very interested in this project, and I think it's going to be a great group, and I'm looking forward to working with all of you. I am talking fast because I am at another meeting at 6 o'clock right now, so I'm going to jump, but I wanted to kick it off and say that thank you, and next item on the agenda is to elect an officer or a chairman. So do I have a nomination for chair of the Great Island Advisory Committee?
I'd like to nominate my Board of Selectmen colleague, John Zagroski, to be the chair of this committee.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Bruce seconds. Excellent. All in favor? Terrific.
Opposed?
Okay.
Wait, what? What's that?
Okay. I know. So I'm going to turn it over to John. And again, a sincere thank you to all of you for wanting to do this. This is terrific, and this is going to be really exciting.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks, Mark.
All right, good deal. Okay, well, welcome to everybody from me as well. This should be quite the interesting journey. This is a seminal investment for the town, so gathering a brain trust like this to work on this is, I think, going to be great. We've got two other officer positions we need to appoint, and then we'll kind of march down our agenda here. Next one is for vice chairman. So if I could get a nomination for Mr. Adaletta to be our vice chair, that would be great.
So nominate.
All right, second?
Second.
Okay, Jeff, so all in favor? Congratulations, Mark. And then we need a nomination for secretary. Mr. Burke?
I'd like to nominate Jeffrey Table to be our secretary of this august body.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Bruce, all in favor? Terrific, okay. So Monica went through, or just said we all kind of know each other. It might be interesting just to do this for the public benefit, since this is on television, just to everybody talk a little bit about what their role is here, particularly our 4 resident members. So we'll just kind of go around the table. John Zagrodsky, I'm on the Board of Selectmen, and we're going to be spending a lot of time on the Great Island Commission, and have certainly been involved in all this. Lori?
Hi, I'm Lori Bora, lived in town for 34 years. I am the chairman of the Parks and Recreation Commission, also served a couple terms on the Board of Finance, and also previous volunteer. I was president of the board of the Girl Scout Council in the area for a number of years, where we did a lot of work around parks assessment and managing the land and how to utilize the land and optimize it. So that ties into this project as well.
Mark?
I'm Mark Adaletta. I'm the RTM representative to this committee. I've been on the RTM 15 plus years, served in various subcommittees, Public Works, Parks and Rec, TGS&A, Rules. I may have missed one in there. Currently I'm on Public Works. We've spent some time on Great Island already, and I expect we'll be involved with it. That subcommittee will be involved a little bit going forward as well, I expect. Thank you.
Mr. Burke?
I'm Michael Burke. I'm currently a member of the Board of Selectmen, finishing my 2nd year. Prior to that, I was on the Board of Education for 6 years, where we were involved with some projects of note. And prior to that, I had 4 years on the RTM, where I was on the Public Safety Committee, the Education Committee, and TGS&A.
Well,
Dan?
I'm Dan Kolakowski. I'm one of the resident members, and I've lived in town for 41 years. And I've got, all my kids went through the school system, and now 6 of my grandkids are going through the Darien school system. My expertise is construction management, which I've done for my entire career, mostly in New York City on some projects you would be familiar with, and but including all the parks along the Hudson River, for the Hudson River Park Trust.
Terrific, thank you. Jeff?
I'm Jeff Table, one of the resident members. I have lived here 15 months, lived for the last 41 years in Houston, but my daughter and our 2 young granddaughters live in Darien, so we decided upon retirement to be up here with them. And I spent the last 35 years of my career at the Houston-Galveston Area Council, which is the metropolitan planning organization for Greater Houston. I was the director of community and environmental planning, and my portfolio included our watershed protection, conservation, water quality programs, as well as community planning programs. And most of my expertise there is in placemaking and pedestrian and bicyclist access. Also did economic development and our demographics program. And addition to that, I think skills that I could offer to the committee. I've had a lot of experience managing consultant teams and done a little bit of grant writing as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Bruce.
I'm Bruce Ferguson, and I'm a resident member of the committee. And I've lived in Darien for, I guess, 50 years, with a short break for, after college, working in New York and a couple other places, but quickly came back here and settled down with my wife, and so was brought up here, obviously, and then have raised my family here. I've been involved in town in a variety of boards, most recently the Darien Athletic Foundation and the Darien Library, and earlier on I was on a committee in this building. I was on I think the first IT committee as an appointee by the first selectman when I was a much younger guy, and I was on the board of the Nature Center. So I've done a bunch of different things, and I really look forward to being part of this.
Jim Palin. I'm currently the chair of the Board of Finance. I've been on the Board of Finance for 8 years. Before that, I was on the RTM for 8 years, and I was chair of Finance and Budget on there. I've been in town about 19 years, 3 kids, one of which made through the schools. The other 2 are still in the schools. I've been, worked very closely with Monica on, some of the initial stages of the acquisition. A lot of it initially on like the boring stuff, the legal stuff, the financial stuff, the planning, the bonding, the financing, but also spent a fair amount of time helping her kind of organize some of her initial thoughts around it. I've had some experience on some of the building committees in town, and also currently serve on the football board, but very excited to kind of work with you all on this. It's an important asset, it's an expensive asset, and I think it's one that can really change further change the face of this town.
Okay, good.
Yep. Kip Vesey, one of the residential members and lifelong member of Darien. A few stints away, but made my way back. So went through the school system, and now 2 kids of my own, and several family members in town as well. So where I lack in positions in the local government or particular roles that apply to the project, I like to pride myself on being in tune with the town, the spirit of the town, and what the residents are looking for. Professional background in financial modeling and planning as well, and also small business owner, providing classes to young children, so help out with that as well. But really looking forward to being part of the board and not only helping out, but learning along the way as well.
Again, I appreciate everybody here, and I also appreciate all the folks who applied to be resident members but were not selected. It's astounding what talent we have in this town, just the number of people with backgrounds that are hardly believable in terms of just the expertise and perspective, but it's one of the great things about living here, which is why we're all here trying to contribute. So what I'd recommend we try to do a little bit tonight is make this a little bit organizational. We've got a lot of work to do, and so making sure we've got ourselves set up to where we can meet in an efficient manner, stay focused on both sort of near and medium term work, at least initially, and then to make sure that the committee itself is organized in a manner that's going to be efficient, I think would be our task for today. And then to try to have one more meeting before Labor Day so that we can keep things moving along. That would be kind of my objective, to get organized for today. What I thought I'd do is start by reading a couple of things from the charter. I'm going to make sure that the town staff sends this around since you guys have fresh copies of this, but it had been circulated before. But this is language around the committee's initial charge, and it's worth just repeating a few of these things so that we can kind of ground ourselves in the elements of this charter. And a few of them are administrative, which I won't read, but they are as follows. So, identify, interview, and recommend to the board such professionals and consultants deemed necessary to advise the committee on its charge, including the terms under which they will serve the committee. Provide oversight of selected professionals. Create infrastructure plans and related projects that will enable residents to safely access the property and present the details and costs of such plans and projects to the board for approval. Develop operating and capital budget estimates for any infrastructure plans or related projects for presentation to the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, and the RTM. Develop and submit applications to town, state, and federal regulatory authorities as required to carry out the project. Provide oversight of the projects and related expenditures. Report to the Board of Selectmen at least monthly on the progress of the committee's work. And finally, provide a financial update on a monthly basis to the Board of Finance with the assistance of the Finance Department. So it's a pretty broad charter. What I would do is I would liken it to the function of a building committee. So when Jamie was first selectman, one of the things she did was she said that any building project over $1 million, we ought to form a committee around that. And having served on a couple of those, they're extremely powerful because what you're doing is you're not executing the project. That's what the contractors and the professionals who are actually building or constructing or renovating, that's what they do. The building committee does is helps not just in the selection of those groups, but keeping everything on track, asking a lot of questions, making sure that we've got a good perspective on what's being executed and why, so that we can, with our own expertise, come in and provide perspectives, but also just make sure that everything is coordinated and managed in a proper way. We also have oversight over things like budget overages and trying to keep track of the financial side, which is one of the things I read in the initial charter of the committee. And so providing that kind of oversight, I think, is going to be exactly what we end up doing, just like a building committee. And I think that'll be something that adds a lot of value to this process. Further to that, in terms of organization, one thing I've done on other committees is to subdivide the committee into, well, subcommittees. And we ought to think about what those subcommittees might be. I don't think we need to actually rush the designation of those committees. But the reason for doing that is that in a group of 9, it's going to be hard to come to decisions on things, or at least do it efficiently, because everybody's going to want to have a point of view. So in the next meeting or two, what we'll try to do is to get some structure around the group and decide what subcommittees would make our work more efficient. Some ideas that we had were an infrastructure committee, which could be around access road improvements, removal of transformers, underground storage tanks, all of that. Second would be environmental remediation. As you'll recall from some of the public discussions, as well as some of the studies we did as part of due diligence, they identified some environmental matters that we've got to take care of. And the town's working on some of that, but having a subcommittee to oversee or pay attention to that work, I think, will be important. There's a further dimension around community planning that we think would be important. So this is going to involve things like identifying landscape architects, developing a long-term vision for the property, thinking about the coastal shoreline and coordinating with the Coastal Advisory Commission, which I think could bring a lot of expertise to this group, and a few other committees: legal and regulatory, finance, public relations and community engagement, and even historical preservation. And there's quite a story to tell around Great Island and the neighboring Ziegler property that's just history related, and maybe institutionalizing or preserving that as part of this committee's work could actually be tangential to the development of the island, but something we'd want to make sure we have and can feature when we talk about what we're trying to accomplish. So, as I said, when we work on the organization, we'll sort through that. Last thing I wanted to say was what we should focus on, and I want to kind of go around the table and get folks' reaction. You recall from Monica's presentations when we were doing a little bit of visioning. There were some third parties that helped us, and she developed a presentation where she talked about sort of 5 zones at the island, and sort of each one of those zones would have its sort of own purpose or theme, if you will. I think that's very good for a starting point with that long-term visioning. And we're going to really dive into that, take that apart, get a lot of community input, and come up with something that works. But there's something right before that, I think, which is really answering a big public question that I get frequently, and that's around when do we get access to the island? And then once we're there, what can we do? And we ought to come up with a compelling answer to that and a way to crisply and cleanly articulate that to everybody. That's not only what, but when. And so the town is already doing a lot of work around what you have to have in place to get access to the island. So this is things like safety and security, signage, roadway access, all of that. A lot of that's underway right now. But what we're going to do at the next meeting is Monica's going to come in and give a more fulsome update in terms of that work. We'll probably get a Gentile who runs Public Works for the town. He'll come in and present as well. And we'll get a full update. I think an important thing for this committee is making sure you guys have a steady stream of information about not just historically what got us to this point, but what the town's doing right now on all that stuff. And then what we'll do is come in and ask questions and then try to package that in such a way that we can present it to the public, both in terms of the substance, who, what, when, how, how you're going to get access to the island, but also how we're going to get the message out, right? Whether it's social media, postings to the town website, all that stuff. And we can work through all that and come up with something that I think will be pretty effective. But that kind of next 6-month short-term decision-making and sort of process, we ought to try to come to a quick point of view based on what's going on with the town staff right now, so that soon after Labor Day, we'll be able to articulate to everybody, here's what you can expect and when, and we got a plan, and we're right on top of it. As that work gets done, we'll pivot to the longer-term stuff and kind of pick up where Monica left off in her presentations. So those were the main messages I wanted to convey in my kind of introductory comments. Let me stop there and open it up for questions or comments. You know, Jim, you mentioned at the beginning you've been involved a lot in the acquisition of this property. I don't know if there's some elements of that you'd like to summarize to get these guys up to speed from your perspective, or even comments on anything I said.
Yeah, I mean, maybe just from a budget standpoint, I would say the Board of Finance started, and I think we'll make sure Jen starts to get that around, and kind of piggyback on what our board tracks. But we have sort of a running tally of what the expenses were of acquisition, of things that we spent so far with respect to environmental remediation, studies, legal, and other types of things. Now that's going to expand, but I do think it was important, I think, from all parties involved to kind of make sure we track the expenses associated with this. So I think that's something I guess I can make sure we circulate around.
Absolutely. Not just the acquisition expenses, but what we're going to recommend later that they spend in terms of development dollars. So that'll also require a lot of tracking and analysis.
Yeah. And then I think in terms of, originally the island was contracted to purchase for $103 million. And then, during the diligence period, it was renegotiated down to $85 million. So there was some additional appropriation. I think, if I had to summarize, I think all boards were of the view that we have some additional appropriation there, which is to be used to really, I think, limited to kind of getting access underway and so forth, but additional new programming, new development and things like that we would do. I think that would go through the normal appropriation process where we basically come up with an idea, come up with a budget, and then that would sort of restart back to the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, and RTM. So I think while the committee, if you will, the town does have some additional appropriation, I think the spirit of that is just to use it for, I don't want to say the bare basics, but just really for sort of safety, access, and so forth. And then any real new programming would go back through all the normal approval channels.
Okay, terrific. Lori, you've probably been involved or worked a little bit on this, given your committee role.
One of the things I think that we need to think about early on is, yes, it's giving access to the public, but we also really have to be mindful of controlling access. We do struggle with the parks. We do have incidents of vandalism, certainly mostly at Weed Beach. While that property gets closed off at night, we're having a lot of issues with folks still getting onto the property, parties going on, campfires being built. So you think about Great Island, which is very secluded, and there's also access from the water. Really being mindful of that and thinking about how we keep that under control for the summer. The park staff has an individual who, previous years we got someone from a security company. This year we kind of brought it in-house and actually had a very long-term town resident apply for this job, and he literally spends his days going through the parks, checking in, seeing what's what. He got a shirt that identifies him, but he is also going up to Great Island once a day just to kind of take a look around, but it's only once a day. But that is something we're really going to have to be very mindful. I know the Coastal Commission, which I sit on as an ex officio member, is absolutely very concerned about, people accessing the property from the water end, because would be very easy to do.
I think it's a good point. So many of our parks are actually in somewhat residential areas where there's a lot of traffic and a lot of eyes.
Yeah.
This tends to be very secluded.
And this is very secluded.
Yeah.
So you think we have problems at Weed Beach where you've got people in, Norwood Bay, you got people at Brush Island, but still, last summer we had a huge park bench ended up on the roof of the bathhouse one night. Really dangerous situation if that had fallen. But there's definitely evidence of campfires and things like that, which again, right now it's very wet, but dry season can be problematic. So,
Okay.
I would assume or hope that the town is, engaged the police force to be maybe doing drive-throughs and whatever. But again, it's more property than they don't have. I shouldn't speak for them, but Don Anderson has definitely told me even getting officers out on foot every night at Weed Beach. So they're trying to cover that a little bit more for us, like do a walkthrough after midnight or something on weekends. But they don't really have the staffing for their officers to be getting out and walking through a property like that to check what's going on.
Not that size, sure, absolutely.
So it is tricky.
Okay, all right.
I think, John, one of the points you made was kind of rolling out timing to our residents when they could expect access and sort of how that would work. I think, I think I should know the number. I think there are 5 sort of leases on the island for different sort of apartments and buildings, and those are all, designed to be relatively short-term, but I think it'll be important to make sure we can communicate to them, because the town would need to make some decisions as it relates to, giving those people proper notice about what our next steps are going to be so that they can plan as well.
In some ways, that's good right now. There's people living on the property because it is some, eyes and
It's not
eyes and
completely
ears.
empty property, that's good.
Right.
Mark, how about some of the conversations of RTM that you're hearing that would be relevant to consider?
Sure, the main topic that's been touched on here is access.
Okay.
The public would like access, and so we've touched on when, how, the types of topics that are coming up the most at this early stage. I know when Monica described the project back when it was being proposed, she described it as a canvas. There's lots of natural assets there, and there's lots of constructed assets. Understanding which of those assets are going to, at least in the early stage, when that access comes, might be available, will be the inevitable next question. So I think that's the biggest category of questions I've been fielding is access, when, how, and to what.
Mike, your reactions?
I think access equals enthusiasm and equals buy-in from our community. I think that's properly job one. I think consideration of the zones and what comes next, and this was something that was that I communicated to almost everybody that we talked about or talked with for the citizen positions, are that we have this and we develop it thoughtfully, carefully. There are multiple aspects related to what you might do there, what it might cost, how you're going to fund it. But I think it all starts with at least access, getting our citizens' feet on that property and walking it around, and then I think they'll want to come and be part of this process, or they'll tune in and they'll say, oh, okay, they're talking about Great Island, I was there last week, I want to see what's going on, I want to see what it's going to potentially cost in my, tax bill. I think those are the kinds of conversations that, gets complete community buy-in. I'm looking forward to having those for our citizens.
Great point. Dan, what's your reaction?
I think that the more access that people have, the better the feedback's going to be from the community. If they've seen it, what they tell us they want on the property will be more meaningful, I think. I'm curious, what percentage of the acreage is impacted by the arsenic or contamination? And does that impact access to the site at all? If people are walking kids around, do we have to avoid certain areas, or are they unavoidable?
So it's not the entire island. The arsenic arises from the usage when these were apple orchards back 100 years ago, and that's what they used as a pesticide. And it's not just there, it's the Ziegler property. There are lots of places where, any place there was an orchard like that, that's where that comes from. The nature of that problem is this is down in the soil, so if somebody were to come over and aggressively dig and be in the dirt like that, okay, that's not good. One of the things that we're going to try to focus on is a level of remediation that gets the island to the point where, unless somebody is down deep into the dirt like that and a kid playing, right, unless they're doing that for an extended period of time, they should be fine. And so we're going to be very clear about what the nature of all that is and exactly what that remediation is. But that process is going to start. I actually don't know when that would start. Maybe you've got more
I
perspective.
think certain areas, they've already, there are a few different ways in which you can remediate it, and some of which can be like vegetation and so forth. And I think as we all think about sort of the next steps here, just to use an example, if there's an area that might need to be affected, well, if we're going to decide to put a sort of gravel parking lot in that area, well, then that would probably alleviate the need to do anything there.
Right.
To John's point, if it's going to be something that's going to be very sort of actively disturbed, if you will, we might have a different type of mediation plan there.
Right, or something that people are just not going to get into the dirt. It's no playgrounds, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So that's all going to be pretty carefully managed. And what I want to do is reserve a more complete discussion on that until we get the town staff, because they'll tell us how far they've gone with that work, what remains to be done, and sort of what their vision is about the level of remediation and what restrictions, if any, we've got to put on certain sections of the property. But the idea is to get this to where this is a safe place to be. So residents should not be concerned that we're going to permit people to go onto the island who really would have major concerns about that. We're going to take a careful look at it. That's a good question. Jeff, what do you think about all this so far?
I think it sounds like a great approach. I agree that you've got to be there to really grasp, I think, what the possibilities are. I won't profess to be as connected as you all are with the community, but just since the article came out, I've had people telling me, hey, let me put some stuff on your list. So I think also, understanding what our rollout plan is for the robust public engagement is going to be important. So as I understood,
I'm going to touch on that, but
yeah, we've got to get this done. That's the fast track, and then probably the next job is to be able to answer. And when can I give you all my ideas? I was just curious to what extent, you referenced the work staff is doing. To what extent will the staff be supporting our work as we go forward?
it's a great question. There's a long list of ex officio members to the committee. So Ed Gentile, for example, Public Works, Monica's first selectman, and several others, park staff, Jeremy Ginsburg. There's a bunch of people that are all the town professionals that are going to be overseeing the workforce that delivers a lot of this, or at least that does the town's share of the work. So they'll be ex officio to this committee. So as we move along, those individuals are actually going to be scheduled to be at these meetings, particularly if there's a topic relevant to their oversight. And I will call on them and they will present directly. So the benefit of that structure, just as we would do with the building committee, is that it's committees and professionals working together. There's a committee, but these professionals are ex officio and they'll be at every meeting once things really get underway. So the good thing about that is that when you get a briefing, it's going to be from the horse's mouth. You'll hear directly from those folks. Great point.
I think probably some of the things that may be done, there may not be a need for sort of third-party contracts and so forth. It could be just done by town staff itself, whether it be Parks and Rec or Public Works.
Yeah, and we've done that on the building committees before, because sometimes it's just more efficient or cheaper for town staff to pick up certain aspects of that work. So good point. Other questions or thoughts?
That's it for right now.
Okay. So now in Houston, they pave over everything, so I want you to get that out of your no paving.
Believe me, it's a refreshing change of pace not to see all that concrete and asphalt everywhere.
Good deal.
And I just must say that, we benefit from wise decisions people made before us, and the amount of conserved land here. We were working on a conservation project in Houston, and getting started 50 years ago is the key. So I'm hoping people will say the same thing about this project in 50 years, is thank goodness it got started then.
We'll probably all still be on the committee.
Yeah.
Hey, John, has everyone here been to the property?
Well, I'm going to go through tours.
Oh, okay.
and go
It's
on
been
that
a
side.
long
I know.
time.
Yeah, it's been a long time. We're
Been a
going to
year.
get all that set up. Bruce, thoughts?
Well, first of all, I think that, access is what everybody's talking about, and I think that's a great thing, because I think access, if people want access, it means they're enthusiastic, it means they're supportive, they want to be there, they want to check it out, and for good reason. I just, to all of you who had something to do with casting a vote or building a consensus to make the acquisition happen, I just think it was a fantastic accomplishment. And having lived here for a long time and seen the missed opportunities that we could have, should have done, I'm just so happy that we're sitting at this table. So I think as far as access goes, one of the good things that we have on our side here is that, from what I've heard, most of the enthusiasm around the access is really being there and just using it as the natural resource, the wonderful, beautiful place that it is. And so to the extent that we can get work done to provide the ability for people to walk, bike, or drive and park and walk the property, explore, see the wildlife, see the seascapes and every the fields, just everything that's there. It's and I've spent a lot of time on that property in my life, and I think it's awe-inducing, always.
Yeah, that's
So-
a great word for it, it really is.
It's, so I think that, while there may be some tall orders of ideas that people bring to us where they want us to do grand plans of things that could cost money, take time, I think getting access and getting a walking path that just lets people be there is probably attainable by us. And so it's a step one, and I'm glad that's it. And I'm glad that the property has so much innate beauty and offering that that's all we might need to do to actually show people that we're on the right track.
Yeah, Mother Nature did a pretty good job on
Yeah.
that.
I want to echo that. You did a nice job describing that, Bruce.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah, John, another question that has come up in different discussions I've had is people want to know when it says public access, whether that will be limited to Darien residents or truly public access. So I don't know what body that falls into, but that definitely is a question that has come up.
We'll
a
add that to
number
the
of
list.
times.
Yep, that's something we need to be
Yeah,
clear
and what-
about.
and what that might,
Yep.
what that might look like.
And John, just one point, and just thinking about Jeff and Dan's background, I know, there are a lot of grants available at the federal and state level for all types of sort of park development and so forth, and I know a lot of those grants are complicated, long applications and can sort of long gestation periods, so it might make sense to think early on about what grants might be out there, because I know a lot of these, you need the cadence and how you go about things need to follow a certain path in order to be eligible for it, so maybe it's something we should work with staff or maybe have a subcommittee that looks into what grants might be available to do any of this.
Right, and then what is tied to that grant in terms of
Yeah.
of what you have to do to qualify for it. I like that. Kip, what do you think of all this so far?
A lot of good things have been said already. I should have sat over there. I would have had a turn earlier. But no, I think just to build on that, once you get that access and buy-in, I'm sure all the residents and everyone involved are going to want to have their ideas on the table. So I think clear communication is key,
Yep.
and not only on if they're being heard, but also limitations and what people aren't seeing to clearly define what is possible and what is not. And then to build on the awe-inspiring aspect of the property, I would also say that this is not only a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, but once-in-many-lifetimes opportunity. So trying to remove any ego from the equation and really just think about what we're leaving as a legacy for the town is extremely important.
Yeah, to Bruce's point, when you go out and see this land, one time I went, it was a cold day and it was raining and the water was a little bit rough, and I took a video of it. It does not do justice. It's astounding. If you have an ego when you go see that, it takes care of it right away when you realize just the majesty of that place. Okay, let's cover a few other topics. We talked a little bit before about tours. It'll be important for all of you to be familiar with the island, both from past perspective, if you've spent some time there, but specifically with a lens towards kind of this committee's charge and what we need to do. So we're going to try to arrange some tours to get everybody out there to go see that. And one of the things we might think about kind of offline is coming up with some aspects of the island that we'd like to see or things we'd like to pay attention to that we need to understand. So for example, making sure you understand the horse stable and the situation there, the old house, the rental properties, the place that's, I forget where that beach is, where the houses that are down at
The beach house.
The cute little
yeah,
beach
all of
house.
that. You really just got to go see that. And when you see it, you'll understand from a safety standpoint, from a development standpoint, all that will kind of come to life in your mind. So we're going to arrange that. Folks on the Coastal Advisory Commission, they also mentioned wanting to come on some tours so that they can get a sense of the water interface and how they can be helpful to this group. And there's a lot of expertise on that committee and that we can leverage as part of this. And they brought up all kinds of considerations that we should incorporate into that. So one of the things I will do as a charge coming out of this is to see if we can start to arrange that. Not everybody's going to be available at the same time, so we'll do several groups to kind of go out there. I'll try to go on each one so that we can get you all up to speed on that as much as we can. One other point I want to bring up is what I would call as an individual commission member charge. We should always be available to take public input as to what's going on. So your names are attached to this commission, not to spoil the mystique you might bring to social gatherings, but be sure to ask people around, hey, I'm on this commission, what do you think about all that? And you may find that a lot of the ideas will run together, but sometimes there will be some innovative point or interesting suggestion that somebody has. And the more that we have at the table, the better our collective answer is going to be about what to do about a great island. And I would tell members of the public who are watching, you're not restricted in terms of providing your input to just talking to folks on this commission. You can call Town Hall at any time. Our email addresses are posted. You can reach out directly or just to speak to somebody at Town Hall and register your ideas or your interest in some aspect of this. So we want to make sure that this is a pretty open process and an open group for folks to reach out to. But definitely talk to people in the community. That's one way you could really add value to this community or to this committee is reaching out to folks in your social circles and your constituencies and see what they think. The couple other things. One is public hearings. Someone asked me about this yesterday and whether we would be having any of that. That's a good way to get a presentation or an end product out for people's reaction, is to convene one of those hearings. Sometimes you'll get good attendance, but it's the way it's broadcast out is a good way to just summarize things for general public consumption. So I don't think we'll have any hearings until we get to that point in terms of something to present, but that's a great way to get a perspective out to the community, and we'll certainly take advantage of that vehicle when we can. I also want to talk a little bit about meeting calendar and kind of format. So I kind of take input from the group in terms of when our next meeting should be, but also what cadence of meetings we should have, and also whether we should try to do these all in person or by Zoom. My sense is that we could probably get away with a mix and maybe have certain agenda themes that are covered by Zoom, other things that we do in person. It'll be easier, I think, when we've got a lot of town staff showing up to do something in person that's just unwieldy when you've got a giant meeting on Zoom. I'd certainly recommend that subcommittees probably do their work by Zoom because it's a smaller group. It might be easier for you guys to meet. One thing I need to remind everybody is that we do set up these subcommittees because they're officially chartered subcommittees for this group. They also have to have agendas, they have to be warned, and they have to be televised. And so I don't say that in a negative way. I want all those discussions to be public so people can watch and see what's going on. But we should be judicious in the committees that we set up just because those all have to be a public record. So, please.
Do we or don't we have the technology to do hybrid meetings? I know it's a question I've gotten asked with Parks and Rec, where I have a member who's away on business. It was like, if we could do a hybrid, I could participate, and up to now, we really have not had the technology to support that. We tried it one time last November, and it failed miserably.
So you
Because
are-
there's sometimes people are like, I'm not physically here, but I could participate, so.
So you are looking at that technology right now. So we've had Board of Selectmen meetings when I was overseas. I had it on my iPad. I could see the presentations there. You don't see the group when a slides start to come up
Right.
when they're sharing their screen.
Yep.
And I think I could see reasonably well, and I could vote, and it seemed to work okay.
Okay.
It's not fantastic, and I'm not sure the technology is really going to improve that, just because if there's a group that's meeting in person, you just can't beat that. But still, you can
Understood.
participate and
Yeah.
listen to the proceedings. So I think if we do it, my recommendation would be to have either in person or Zoom, and if it's in person, to make sure that somebody who wants to be there can participate remotely if they have to. So we'll definitely do that.
I like the in-person, just because
I do
I think
too.
it's like good getting together, particularly as we get staff, because you can better understand things, and presentation materials aren't always available, but it is good for, when you have to travel, it's nice to have the option, if, rather than miss out, somebody can
Yep.
give input and sort of zoom in, if you will, so this.
Yep. In terms of timing, I mean, our boards, for example, the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance meet at 7:30 when they do meet. And it's a good kind of after-work time. We might try to create something like this for this commission. Now, you and I are at work. Who all is working and who is retired? Okay, so we got a mix of people we got a mix of people that'll have maybe prefer evening schedules for all that. So what I'll do is I'll come up with a suggested structure for that. I'd vote that we try to set the next meeting for sometime before Labor Day, because I'd like to get a presentation from Monica and town staff to start to get you all up to speed on both things like access, but also all the work that's being done on the island currently, and the public should hear all that as well. So I will get that set up, and then after that, let's try to set up monthly meetings, say through the end of the year. Let's see how that goes. If we need to meet more frequently, we could do that. But also at the next meeting, I think our subcommittees will start to come into focus. And the chairs of those subcommittees, you can dictate how often you want to meet depending on the topics you're working on.
John, do you think it would be useful to try and make it the goal that the tours or visits to the island by this committee take place before our next meeting?
I think that's a great idea. I know Monica's out of town for the first week in August, and I'm out of town the last week in August, so I'm thinking kind of third week in August that we would try for that meeting, again, depending on everybody's availability here. And let's do the tours the weekend, maybe schedule them the couple of weekends before that. I know I'll be around and we could do that. How does everybody feel, if you've got your calendars here, about a meeting the third week in August, if we were to do that? And what things look like for perhaps tours before that? So if we tried to meet an evening sometime the week of the 21st, which is that Monday, what's everybody's schedule that third week in August? Are you around?
I'm around.
Dan is around. Jeff?
Yes, I'm around.
Bruce?
Yes. The 24th is my anniversary, but
Okay,
I'm
we'll
around.
schedule that meeting. So bring Haley. We'll make it romantic, but bring a dozen roses for her. Okay.
Okay.
Around.
You're around? Okay, I'm around. Lori, where are
I
you?
think I'm away.
Think you're away?
I think I'm away.
You okay?
I'm good.
Mike?
Third week, is- week of the 14th is
See
fine.
that?
We the 14th or?
No, that's the third week.
That's the
Oh,
21st.
Oh, because I was looking at
Oh, yeah,
that.
well-
21st is fine.
21st is fine?
Oh,
All
that week is fine.
right, let me know. But what I'll do is I'll work with Linda, and we'll get a doodle calendar out there to kind of pick the right day to maximize participation. But I'll also coordinate with Monica, Ed, Jeremy, let me see,
I'm not
whoever.
sure if Jeremy is an ex officio on this. I'm not
Yeah, I
sure why
think
not.
he is.
Is? I didn't
But
put him on
certainly
your
Ed
list.
is.
but
Certainly Ed is, and let's see what
Ed
we
is,
could get
right.
there. We could get to
They're
that
all on
meeting.
the list of the.
John, there's a
contact
Board of
sheet.
Selectmen meeting on the 21st, which is that Monday, but there's no meetings, other town meetings on the 22nd, that Tuesday, or the 23rd, that Wednesday.
Okay. All right, we'll try to target one of those 2 days, so
Yeah.
see if you can keep that open, and we'll
the town
go from
calendar.
there and let me know
Yeah,
when your
text my
schedule's
husband, see if he
for-
can find two of those days with me.
Okay.
The other thing we'll just going forward have to take into consideration is the different town board meetings. Like the selectmen meeting are like every other Monday.
That's what you were looking at, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
We're-
Tuesday and Wednesday are free. No
Okay,
other.
we're the third Wednesday of the month.
So you're probably the 16th of August, right?
Yeah, we're probably not going to have an August meeting, but that would be our typical date, yeah.
All right, well, we'll do,
But
this maybe.
For
let's-
like the longer term
Let's look at the
calendar.
town meetings, and we'll try to pick a night when you guys will be available.
I got there.
Sounds good.
All right. I'm signing up Linda for a lot of stuff. but-
Coastal Commission, for instance, is the third Monday.
Okay, all right, so we'll come up with all that. So those are the main things I wanted to accomplish tonight. Just by way of review, we'll get on the list is tours, and what we'll do, try to do that the 2 weekends before that. We'll see if we can organize some tours to go out for this group, for the advisory commission, and if there's other town officials listening to this that want to go, drop me a note, and we'll try to bring you along as well. We'll get the third week in August set up for either that Tuesday or Wednesday for the next meeting of this group, and we'll get the right town folks to come and be the big part of the agenda, which is to update this committee on what's going on there. We will, it's tours, it's that, what else? I'll send around some suggestions that we had for subcommittees and just some other materials for this group to take a look at in advance of the August meetings, that you guys can take a look at that. And I've got some minutes from this meeting that I'll circulate as well to just stimulate your thinking and make sure that we're ready to get started at that session. Let's see if there's anything else.
Is it worth commenting, John, about if you're going to be sending out emails about exchanging back and forth, responding and discussion?
Yeah, so what I'm going to, just
Right.
as a reminder about transparency on all this, so this is an official town body, so we have to be careful about having any substantive conversations outside of a public meeting, right? So what I can send out, if I send out anything substantive like minutes or perspectives, I'm going to blind copy the commission to make sure that nobody replies. I can send stuff out. We just can't have a debate or dialogue about it. So if you have something that you want the whole committee to look at, say in advance of a meeting, it's okay to send it out, but I'm asking you to just blind copy everybody on the commission so that we don't get a reply all or something like that. It's just, if you have a perspective like that where you want to reply all, just write it down and bring it up at the next meeting so that way the public's got sort of full access to what we're trying to do. So it's pretty important that we don't do that. And then the town staff will help us stay on track in terms of making sure these meetings are appropriately warned, that we get agendas out in advance, and that all the materials are sent out as well. Just as a reminder, also anything that I send out, I'm going to make sure that we capture that and get that posted on some website, which I haven't really figured out how we're going to do that. But I want to make sure all that's accessible by the public as well.
John, it'd be great, the same way all the other boards and commissions all have on the town calendar, they have the agendas, then they have the minutes, and then
Yep.
they have all the materials that we're discussing.
Right.
So everybody kind of posts all three up there.
Yeah, because each meeting will have the agenda that's decided in advance, and then any materials or minutes that were done during the meeting are appended to all that. So if somebody wanted to come in and take a look at that, that's there. The only time you can have stuff that's not publicly broadcast is if it's a confidential land negotiation or something like that. A lot of the work that we had to do with the Board of Selectmen with regard to the acquisition of the property was done in executive session for that reason. And then second is personnel matters or things that are confidential in that regard. But other than that, really the work of the commission and any subcommittees we have should all be done in public, and that's just a good thing. Okay.
And I think since there are 9 people on this committee, if 5 decide to get together and start talking about it, that's just not, that could be deemed to be a meeting.
Right.
Yeah,
So
because
just-
it's a quorum, but if 2 or 3 of us are out chatting about something, it's not a meeting quorum. Not that we're going to hide anything from anybody, but if we had to talk briefly about, say, a subcommittee chairman, and you and I, or that person and I needed to chat for a minute, and that's not covered by that.
Yeah.
But by and large, we want to keep everything out in the public, because frankly, if the public's informed, we'll get good ideas from them. So it's just a good, healthy way to do that. So.
And we are not allowed to enter the property on our own?
No, so it's not open to kind of anybody but town staff right now that's working on that. So when we arrange this, we'll go through Public Works to make sure all that's done right, because Again, even though we're on this commission, I don't know what's in place in terms of signage or safety matters or whatever. We haven't been briefed on that. So making sure somebody who is a professional that's working on all this can come with us, we will do that. But that's blanket for this commission, the public in general and all that, and that's why I mentioned before that a short-term charge of this committee is making sure we get our minds around access to the property, what you can do once you get there, and when is that going to happen, so that we can make sure the public is knows when the switch goes on. Okay. What else? Any other closing thoughts? Jim, anything on your end? No? Mark, Michael, Lori? Okay. All right. So what we'll do is get the next meeting decided as soon as possible, sometime that third week in August. We'll get tours going in the next couple of weekends, and I think we're off to the races. Sound okay? All right, let me get a formal motion to adjourn. Okay, Mark, second from Mike. All in favor? Aye. Good deal. We stand adjourned. Thanks very much.
Thank you.